So for today, on Tuesday, March 31st, I'm actually going to give you two videos today because I'm wanting to hop between both literacy and math. So you may have just watched the video that I just created involving solving using math up and cooking skills to solve our problem of the week. The second thing that I want to do, though, is I want to show over the next few days, I'm going to be reading some chapters from the book that I had wrote a few years ago entitled Henry Barrie. Henry Barrie was a gentleman that served in World War One, lived in this area in the Ottawa Valley, and I had the pleasure of meeting his son Gordon and his grandson Walter Gemmell 3 or 4 years ago. And they had shared with me a little bit about his story, but more importantly, the diary that Henry had kept during his experience in World War One when he was overseas. And it was through that diary that I really got an understanding and appreciation for who Henry was, what he had went through, and really what life was like during that time. And I just thought that reading through this book at this time may give us a little bit of perspective because I'm seeing a lot of similarities with what life is like today, dealing with COVID-19, and what our ancestors went through during World War One. When you talk about wartime measures, there's a lot of similarities between what we're experiencing today versus what they went through then. And I think probably the biggest hope that I come from it is I know that with COVID-19, we're not going to be under these measures for the 5 years that our country was under during World War One. And so that's why I know that as Canadians, we are going to get through this. There's no doubt that we are going to come together as a country. It's going to make us stronger. It's going to put us in a better place going forward. And I know that because we come from good stock. We come from people that have been through things much tougher than we have, and they did just fine. So, starting tomorrow, I'm going to begin reading chapter one, but I just want to give you a little bit of an intro into the book itself and some of the aspects that you should be identifying here. Right off the bat, you'll notice here that I guess the cover of the book itself, you may be wondering where some of these pictures came from. So right down in the lower right-hand corner, that's Henry himself. This was the picture that he took just before he went off to war in 1914. And as you can see, he was a young man, 19 years old, wide-eyed, very excited to make his way across the country. This was by far the biggest adventure that he had ever been through, and one that his family was quite proud of. And as you go through the book, you quickly realize just how it really became a test of his character and being able to stay true to himself. Some of these other pictures that you might see, most of them actually come from the Merrickville area. Right up in the upper left-hand corner is the Merrickville Legion. If you aren't aware of the folks there, they do great work in the village of Merrickville, right on the main street. If you've ever visited Merrickville, ever walked along the docks, I would certainly recommend if the doors are open. There's normally folks in there, obviously not now, but when life gets back to normal, go in, check them out, say hi to them. You'll also see they have within their walls lots of different decorations, lots of different mementos. This is one where they have basically a wooden cross that was brought over from the battlefields in France. And it's one where the soldier itself actually was moved from France back into the Merrickville area, and that's why the cross came and is currently there. You'll notice they also have lots and lots of pictures of their former veterans who served in the wars. Their cenotaph that they have right in the downtown park is this cenotaph right up here. Right below that, as part of their area, they also have the North Augusta area. Now, the North Augusta is actually affiliated with the Spencerville Legion, but this is their cenotaph as well. And there's a lot of crossover between Merrickville North Augusta, and Spencerville. They do a lot of work together, and so I really wanted to acknowledge that partnership through all of them. And then finally, you can see down here in the lower left-hand corner is the headstone of Henry himself and where he is currently buried. Henry did return from World War I, and as we read through the book, you will see that. And so I'd like to just scroll down a little bit. Again, in terms of some of the acknowledgements, there were lots and lots of folks that were involved. Again, the Barrie family themselves were just wonderful in terms of allowing me to have access to anything and everything. This book would not have came together without the stories that they shared, the access that they gave me, and really entrusting me with being able to tell Henry's story in a way that was honoring him and who he was. There was also lots of folks from the Lanark area, from the Watson's Corners area, where Henry grew up and where most of the story takes place, and sharing some information there. Retired Colonel Dan McKay was a huge help in writing this book. I do not come from a military background. And so as I was working through the research and a lot of that information, and when it came time to writing, as retired Colonel McKay said after he saw the first draft, he was very, very nice and said that it was obvious I did not come from a military background. He could have destroyed me in terms of some of the things that he said, but he was very gracious and really corrected everything that I had wrong in there. And so I can say unequivocally that it is truly honoring to all of our veterans. It's truly honoring to all of our soldiers within this book that this information is correct. And retired Colonel McKay is really the reason for that. Again, if you ever have an opportunity to go and visit the museum that he has set up, he is in charge of, he's basically in charge of the history of the Highlanders. And if you know the Cameron Highlanders, you know that they are the folks that do the changing of the guard every single day in front of Parliament Hill. One of the iconic symbols that we have within Canada today, and Colonel McKay is a treasure, really truly a national treasure in terms of being able to keep that information. There was lots of other folks that were a big help as well. Reverend John Pillow, Reverend David Kitts, Reverend John McFarland all gave feedback, gave some different ideas. It was also really important to me that Henry's Christian faith was kept pure within this. It is without a doubt the reason that he stayed as true as he did. And so that is why it was, those folks were also really gracious in terms of the kinds of things that they did. Finally, I wanted to bring to your attention that there are more resources. There is a website dedicated to this book as well, and it's simply called www.henrybarrie.weebly.com. And within that website, you'll actually see comprehension questions at the end of each chapter. And when we get into the chapter tomorrow, we'll take a look at some of those questions as well. And if you're wanting to use it from a Christian devotional standpoint or a Catholic devotional standpoint, you can do that as well. There's some scripture references made that were really Henry's favorite verses and things that he kept within his diary and things that he shared with his family afterwards as well. And so that's where that information is coming from. So look forward to hearing what having you join us. You'll notice within the book itself that there are 14 chapters with an epilogue at the end, and it really walks through Henry's entire life, right from the beginning with his parents and his birth, right to the very end, where he actually served not only in World War I, but in World War II as well. And there's within the epilogue, there's some mentions regarding the rest of his life and then his death as well. So The book really looks all the way through, and so I look forward to sharing it with you starting tomorrow. We'll see you then.